everybody, and welcome to ACU's very first webinar for 2023, our Talk with Teachers and Educators webinar. We're very excited to have some special guests with us today, some amazing ACU alumni to share their experience as teachers and educators and graduates of the ACU education programs. My name is Brodie. I'm the Future Students Lead for the ACT here at ACU. But I am able to talk to different things nationally. And we also have a team of moderators, Carol and Jody, joining us today. Welcome, and we will kind of go through some of the logistics of how you ask questions as we get to that point. I'm just going to go through a very quick presentation about our courses and various different pathways into ACU. Once my mouse decides to work for me. So in recognition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people's spiritual and cultural connection to country, and of course in continuing ACU's commitment to reconciliation, I would like to commence this webinar by acknowledging the First Peoples and the traditional owners and custodians of the country where ACU campuses are located. I'm on ACU's Canberra campus, which is located on Ngunnawal country. We respectfully acknowledge our elders past and present and remember that they have passed on their wisdom to us in various ways, and let us hold this in trust as we work and serve our communities and as we meet together today. So what can you study at ACU in terms of if you're looking to be a teacher or an educator? We have a wide range of courses in this area. We are very well known for our with a strong reputation in teaching and education, and our courses cover everything from early childhood education, birth to 5 years, all the way through to secondary. ACU is the largest supplier of teachers into the national education system, and all of our courses at an undergraduate level include a common first year and equip you to teach in any state or territory in Australia. I'm not going to go through what's available on each campus individually because, as you can see from this slide, there are a lot of courses, and they do differ by different campuses, but essentially you can study everything from early childhood to primary at every campus. The only campus that you can't do a secondary education, or sorry, the only state that you can't do a secondary education qualification is in Ballarat. They only do early childhood and primary at an undergraduate level. Every other campus or every other state, you'll be able to do all the way through to secondary. If you are joining us and not entirely sure, I'm about to talk about postgraduate, what the difference is between undergraduate and postgraduate. If you don't already have a university degree, then you would generally start with an undergraduate degree. If you already have a university degree and are looking to add a teaching qualification to that degree, then you would be looking for a postgraduate qualification, which are our next ones here. So generally you do a Masters of Teaching once you already have an undergraduate degree. So for instance, if that was something like early childhood and primary or primary education, you'd be looking to have an undergraduate degree that meets some subject prerequisites, but generally most university degrees are okay for that. If you are wanting to do a Masters of Teaching secondary, so you already have a degree, for example, in science, and you'd like to become a science teacher, then you would obviously need to make sure that your your initial degree that you already have has enough subjects in sciences to meet subject prerequisites so that you can go on and do a Masters of Teaching secondary. Again, I'm not going to go into what courses are offered on which campuses. We would be here too long. You can always go to our website, acu.edu.au/courses, and have a look at our course browser. If you put in secondary education, it'll bring up all the different courses that you're interested in, and you'd be able to see what campuses those courses are offered on. Pathway courses. So for those of you who are looking at an undergraduate level, for example, and you're not sure that you're going to meet the ATAR requirement to get into our degree, or you might be coming back to study after a bit of a break and you're not sure if you have any any qualifications that would enable you to go straight into the degree, we do have a range of pathway options for those interested in going into teacher education. So the first one is a Diploma in Educational Studies, Tertiary Preparation. This program is available on all of our campuses, and it's designed for students who want to do a pre-service teacher degree, so those who don't already have an existing teacher qualification, and who don't meet the admission rank for a bachelor's program, or if you do have the ATAR to get in, you may not have met the required science, English, maths subject prerequisites in Queensland and or Victoria. So the Diploma of Education Studies will help you to meet either that ATAR requirement or to meet those subject prerequisites. If you complete this pathway course, you then will be eligible based on your results to enter into the relevant bachelor degree, and you will get some credit for the studies that you've done in the diploma. For those who do have an ATAR but don't meet the necessarily the admission rank, or in some occasions are looking for prerequisites, we also do have the Bachelor of Educational Studies. That's available across all of our campuses as well. And it, again, it's just another pathway for becoming teachers, has a slightly higher ATAR requirement than the Diploma in Educational Studies. Again, if you complete the first year of study, subject to meeting certain progression and non-academic requirements, then you can apply to transfer into the second year of any of our Bachelor of Education courses. Finally, for those who don't have an ATAR or have an ATAR that is below the entry requirement to get into the Diploma of Educational Studies or the Bachelor of Educational Studies, we do have foundation studies programs on our Blacktown and Melbourne campuses. We started this in Melbourne just this year. The advantage of foundation studies is that the program is free and it provides a pathway that is heavily supported by our academic staff. So you study in a slightly different way to the way that you would study in our other courses. It's much more intensive. You do a lot more contact hours per week, but it's designed to get you skilled up and ready to go in the degree if you do complete our foundation studies program successfully. Basically, what happens is you need to meet a certain GPA to get into our courses, and that is available to you before you even start, so you know what you're aiming for and to get direct entry into our undergraduate degree. So if you do foundation studies and you meet that GPA, then you get direct entry into the degree of your choice. Other pathways that are available outside of ACU. For those of you who are over 21 years old, we do have the Special Tertiary Admissions Test, commonly known as the STAT. It's a multiple choice test that takes 2 hours, and it's basically aptitude. It's testing that you have the potential to succeed at tertiary study. You can sit the STAT a number of times. Any low results will be ignored and you can prepare again and resit it. Once you've done the STAT and you've got an entry score that you think will get you into a degree, it's valid for 3 years prior to the year that you start studying. So if you wanted to start in 2023, it would be valid for 3 years before that. We will only accept STAT applicants who are 21 years or over at the time that you sat the test. So you do need to wait until you're 21 to do the test, and then you can start using those results to apply to university. We also have a higher education pathway in which if you go and study somewhere, you need to have completed a minimum of 2 units of AQF recognised higher education level study. So that's usually a bachelor level or higher. And what that means is you might be able to do some units through open universities, for example. You'll complete those units, you get results from those units, and then we use those results to assign you a selection rank, based on this previous level of study, the duration and the grade point average that you received in your studies. You can do courses for a wide variety of different things. They don't necessarily need to relate to the area of study that you're interested in. So for example, for teaching, you might consider something in the arts, humanities, business or commerce as a great starting point. If you want more information on our pathways, you can visit our website, acu.edu.au/pathways. So now we're into the fun part of the event, where we get to actually meet some wonderful ACU alumni who have taken their ACU studies out into the field and are working in a variety of different areas. So we have Madison, who completed a Bachelor of Education Early Childhood and Primary at ACU in 2016 on our Brisbane campus and is currently a teacher mentor at Good Start Early Learning. Tracy, who completed a Bachelor of Education Early Childhood and Primary in 2017 in Melbourne. And Tracy has quite an interesting career. She's a Senior Training Specialist at Explore. And Daniel did a Masters of Teaching Secondary at ACU in 2017 at our Melbourne campus and is currently an SRC Coordinator and teacher at Star of the Sea College. So we will get started. If you do want to ask questions of the panel, you can use the Q&A section. I will be monitoring the chat. My team will put any questions that are for the panel in the chat section. So please feel free to fire a question away. I'm just going to get started with Madison. Madison, tell us a little bit about your kind of pathway into your career at the moment.
Yeah, so I graduated from ACU in 2016. I went straight from uni, straight into a teaching job at a privately owned kindergarten. I took on a leadership role there before moving to Good Start, was a classroom teacher for 4 years, absolutely loved it. But with all of the many opportunities at Good Start, I moved into educational leader at our largest flagship service in Brisbane before becoming a teacher mentor.
What does the teacher mentor do, Madison?
So I mentor teachers in their first couple of years of study. I'm a peer guide, helping them kind of navigate the skills they learned at uni in a practical application. And I support teachers in Queensland getting their teacher registration, and they have access to me anytime they feel like they're having a little bit of difficulty or just need some support. So lots of in-classroom visits, documentation support, all that sort of fun stuff.
Fabulous. Tracy, you're next on this slide. Tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are in your career.
So very similar to Madison, I studied a Bachelor of Education, Early Childhood and Primary. My first year out of uni, I actually worked full-time with Apple and realized there was quite a deep love of technology there. I took that with me as I became a prep teacher for the next 5 years. And then in the depths of COVID, decided that perhaps a break from teaching might be something that I wanted to explore. As I'm sure 2020 was an interesting year for a lot of people on this call. But I now work for a company called Explore. So quite closely linked to early childhood. What we do is we're an automation software company. So looking at childcare subsidy, booking management for early childhood centres as well as OSH centres. And my role as head of training, that's been a very recent promotion there, is making sure we're managing the resources that we're giving teachers and educators. So any videos, any support guides, any one-on-one training that's done online as well. And I also have the wonderful opportunity to travel across Australia and spend some time face-to-face with centres in the early childhood sector.
Sounds great. Any job that gets you out of your environment for a while is a great job in my books. Daniel, lucky last, tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are.
So yeah, it's quite a journey. So I actually started at the University of Melbourne to do a Bachelor of Arts, but the ACU teaching course, it offered me a little bit more flexibility in terms I wanted to do in terms of my majors. So I graduated as a history, English, and religious education teacher. And for my first school, I actually went to a regional school, Trinity College Colac, which gave me really good grounding, gave me some leadership opportunities. But yeah, now back at a school in Melbourne, Star of the Sea College, Brighton, and yeah, loving being a Year 12 Revolutions teacher, especially being one of my great passions. So, yeah.
Year 12 Revolutions, that's intriguing. It might be something those of us outside of Victoria. Can you explain what that is?
So we do two different revolutions. So we do the French and Russian Revolution. So mainly looking at sort of the fall of the monarchies in those two world powerhouses. So yeah, it's a nice small intimate class, and yeah, it really helps that you have students that are engaged and share sort of similar passions to you as well. So yeah, one of the main things I do love about teaching.
I might continue with you while we're waiting for people to ponder some questions, because I like that you've pointed out that you graduated from your degree and you went out and taught in a regional location. This is certainly an opportunity that's available to everybody. What are the pros and cons of doing that, do you think?
Yeah, so I think the pros are sometimes you're going to sort of like smaller schools where the staff, you kind of know all the staff. It's even sort of like a smaller sort of student base as well. Yeah, my school offered me sort of more leadership opportunities straight away. So I got involved in like the social justice initiatives at my school. I was also the mentor induction officer in my second year at the college as well. So those sort of opportunities you wouldn't necessarily get straight away in your teaching career if you didn't go to a regional school. And And I think it was got a good sort of just to get out of my comfort zone as well. And the fact that you're kind of encountering a whole different range of students that can sometimes challenge you in terms of like your behavior management side of things. But yeah, really sort of helps with your progression as a teacher. And yeah, just that, yeah, as I said, that fact of sort of getting out of your comfort zone, especially.
Yeah, I like it. I think this is a really important time to point out too that for anybody who is out there interested in teaching and education, there are lots of opportunities scholarship wise if you are willing to go into kind of non-traditional areas that graduates go. So if you want to go rurally for, you know, for the first couple of years of your career and get some of those amazing opportunities that Daniel's just outlined, there are scholarships available for you while you study. They might cover some of your they might cover some of your HECS debt, or they might cover some of your moving expenses. Often if you do this, you get priority for, you know, once you do 2 or 3 years, you get priority for where you want to go and teach when you come back. So there are lots of advantages to doing this, not just for you personally in your development, but there are also some financial incentives as well. So it's certainly something worth considering. It gives you a great life experience and helps propel your career. Tracy, can you tell us a little bit, what is a typical day, if there is one, in your job like?
I have the pleasure of working from home at the moment. It's something that really suits my lifestyle, being what I am now, which is outside of the classroom. A typical day in training at a software company is quite a few one-on-one sessions like this. So I will spend quite a bit of time with either one-on-one educators or with teams looking at how they can upskill with their software. It might be solution building, so looking at how this software is currently working and whether we can fill any gaps for them. Like most businesses as well, there's a lot of internal meetings. So looking at operationally, how can we work better? I do work with quite a small team as well, so we have the pleasure of spending some time together. And then when I am away and I guess what we call non-customer facing, it is a lot of editing. So video editing, article editing, all of that creativity that I was able to put into my teaching career with children's resources, I now get to create teacher resources with that. So no real typical day, but quite a bit of time in Zoom.
Yeah, as we all are, feels, you know, we're all very proficient in the use of video conferencing. Madison, you're in a little bit of a different space. What's a typical day, if there is one, for you like?
Like Tracy, no typical day really. I work from home a couple of days a week. I spend a lot of my time driving, to be honest. I spent, I think, 6 hours in the car today, just going out to visit all of our different teachers and just being on the floor side by side with them, helping them to figure out how to do things differently. Not always better, just sometimes differently, you know, behavior support, pedagogical support, planning support, all of that sort of fun stuff. You know, there are observational visits to get their QCT registration. We're quite unique in that we have a really prescribed program to support teachers in doing that. Other times it's sitting here in front of my screen like I am right now, supporting educational leaders, directors, all of that to support our teachers to be their very best for our children. Other days are just a lot of emails and typing, but the days that I get to go back on the floor and be with the children are my favorites.
I bet. It's when I see this question in this teacher context, this typical day in your job, I laugh because I think I'm pretty sure there is no typical day in a teaching job. And Daniel, I'm assuming you're going to say the same thing.
Yeah, every day is certainly different. I guess being secondary school teacher especially, and I teach sort of 3 different subject areas. So 1 minute I might be teaching Year 12 revolutions, and I'm teaching moral philosophy to a Year 11 RE class, or then I'm teaching grammar to a Year 8 English class. It certainly keeps you on your toes and keeps things sort of fresh. Like I don't know if I could do one of those office jobs where every day is sort of a little bit mundane, sort of doing the same tasks. And then there's yard duties, there's after school meetings, maybe a phone call home to a parent or something. So there's lots of things on your plate to keep it entertaining. So
how do you prepare for that? You know, like, and I guess you know, in having to prepare something for every single day of your working life. You don't just rock up and look at what tasks are on your list today. Did ACU kind of prepare you for that? How did that happen?
Yeah, ACU were quite good in terms of the individual subject areas. So I specialized in history and English mainly at ACU. So we would spend a good deal of time creating sort of like unit planners. So I'm a little bit sort of fussy and sort of plan to an inch of my life in terms of trying to get that forward planning sort of done almost at the start of the year. There's always going to be curveballs, or sometimes a class might go slower than another class that you're teaching. All the curriculum planning stuff we did at ACU definitely held me in good stead for what I'm doing at the moment.
Excellent. And Tracy, how did ACU prepare you for kind of where you've ended up now?
I think one of the really key things that I learned at uni was time management. Daniel, I'm not sure if you can account for this for your students, but as a high school student, a lot of your time is accounted for. You know exactly where you need to be, exactly what's due. There is quite a bit of, I'd say, poking and prodding from your teachers to do that. And then once you're in uni, it's different. It is quite independent, and it can be quite enticing having all this free time. Things are due weeks away. You don't really need to worry about it. One thing that I found at ACU was there was a lot of support for students in that organisational side of things. So whether it was things like project planners, time management, actual templates that you could use, making sure we knew how to use a rubric as well for assessments, and things that I've taken into teaching in my current role now. I find that I tend to plan things out really robustly because that's what I've always known since uni now. And it's a really key way for me to make sure that I'm successful and that things don't fall off my plate. So I really do have ACU to thank for that.
And we've gone even a little bit further, I think, since all of you graduated. We are starting to introduce various different initiatives for first year students, particularly since the pandemic, where so much more of your study is happening online. We've introduced new kind of initiatives around, you can't, you know, with your units, and this is in certain units at the moment, but the plan is to expand it. It's called ACU Thrive. And essentially, in order to progress to the next week's a content matter, you need to be passing certain quizzes, and it's just giving us the opportunity to really see how students are progressing and kind of tap in early when somebody is a little bit behind in terms of where they're at, and lots of opportunities for interaction and, you know, short snippets of content rather than sitting down to just, you know, that traditional model of, okay, well, now we're just going to record a 1 hour lecture because a pandemic happened and we have to move the classroom online. Rather than doing that, things are recorded in short 10-minute blocks so you can kind of maintain that attention span. So, you know, I'm glad to hear that we're doing that for both Tracy and Daniel, and still continuing to think about ways that we can keep that happening for our students as we grow as an organisation. Madison, did you have anything to kind of add in that space?
I think probably the small nature of ACU, especially at the Brisbane campus, helped me in my current role trying to interact with new people all the time. So, you know, in high school, you usually with those people from grade 8 to grade 12, I think grade 7 now, right? So being in a brand new environment, going into different classes, different spaces really helped me to navigate and interact with new people every single day. Since I graduated, I have also been working with some lecturers on the ACU campus to do some peer mentoring for students in their first years, just to talk to someone who's already graduated. So that's another layer of support that I didn't have but can now offer. So I think that boutique small nature of ACU's campuses really is beneficial.
Excellent. Yeah. And everybody listening out there, you know, we're having a conversation here. I'm always happy to chat, can talk the leg off a dead horse, but, you know, this is your opportunity to ask any kind of burning questions, both about being a teacher in education as a profession, but also about these alumni's experience at ACU. So feel free to just pop a question in the Q&A and we will get to that. I guess when you start uni, and you know, you've all been out of uni, not too far away now, so hopefully you can still remember this, but when you start at uni, you might have some expectations. You know, this is what my career is going to be like. This is what my study is going to be like. did any of you have an experience where, things have differed from what you were expecting? Madison, you're nodding vigorously.
All the way through my high school years, I knew I wanted to be a teacher, but I was never going to be a teacher in a long daycare. I was so adamant about it. And my whole career has literally been in long daycare because of, the career fairs that ACU offered. I kind of got scooped up at one of those career fairs, and now I get to go back and do those career fairs at ACU. But I think, when I was studying, my job didn't even exist. So you never know where you're going to end up with the skills that you gain, and the connections that you make. Like, I run into people all the time that I knew just vaguely from campus. So it's been an interesting journey, and definitely not where I thought I would be, but I wouldn't change it.
Excellent. And Daniel, I guess when you started your degree, did you think you'd go out and teach regionally, or?
I was open to it. I think that's kind of what you need to be almost for that first job. Just be open to anything. But yeah, I guess with teaching, it's probably just all the different hats you have to wear on a daily basis that surprised me. Like, I kind of always knew I wanted to be in the classroom, but even in my role at the moment, I'm like a mentor as well. So dealing with sort of pastoral issues. So in some ways, you're almost like a counselor as well. In other ways, you're like an event planner, or if you're going, I've also gone on obviously camps, or I've done like some sports coaching. So sometimes you're almost like a nurse, sometimes dealing with injuries and those sort of things as well. So I think those sort of things, yeah, they do make you get out of your comfort zone, but they sort of make you more well-rounded as a person, and yeah, sort of add to the life experiences that you maybe didn't initially think you would have when you went in the teaching profession. So yeah.
If you're looking for a career with lots of variety, teaching's the one for
definitely.
you. You mentioned earlier that you were teaching kind of philosophy stuff in an RE classroom. Did you do the religious education part of the degree, or?
I did, yeah. I did the accreditation to be an RE teacher, and then I did RE as a specialist method as well. So I guess that was part of as I said, I did my undergrad at the University of Melbourne, and yeah, the flexibility of being able to do religious education at ACU is something I wanted to do, and yeah, it probably also works in your favor a little bit when it comes to job applications. And I kind of wanted to work in a Catholic school with the social justice side of things as well. So yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, this is something that, a lot of students might not know about ACU or might assume that you have to do. So at ACU in our education courses, you don't have to do any religious education, any Catholic kind of focused education. But if working in that sector, or as Daniel has pointed out, expanding your employment horizons is something that is of interest to you, you can do those religious education subjects so that you can teach that in Catholic schools. And I can tell you just from conversations that I have with schools here in the ACT, they are subject areas that are in very high demand in the schooling system. So you certainly would be a very attractive candidate if you did have those under your belt. Tracy, has anything really differed for you, kind of taken you by surprise?
I think what really surprised me when I think back to sort of that whole discovery of what was I going to study at uni, there's always been, in everything that I've done sort of in my corporate life, it's always been that underlying love of learning. It started off being a formalized teaching degree, then moved into that sort of teaching people how to use technology, moving back into the classroom, and now I'm teaching teachers. That's always been the underlying, I guess, theme there. But what really surprised me was how easy it was to use a degree that I thought was quite pigeonholed. It's as soon as you sort of hear Bachelor of Education, the immediate thought you have is, oh, that person is a teacher. They're an educator, they're in a room with children. And in every role that I've been, that just hasn't been the case. It's something that you studied, but it doesn't mean that's exactly who you are. So I'm really thankful for all that grounding foundational work, but it's really been such a door opener as I've moved on in my career.
Is that your favorite part of teaching / having a teaching degree, or is there another favorite part?
Oh, I love having a teaching degree because it's something special being able to walk into a room of educators and say, I used to do what you do. There is such a connection there, being able to say, I've stood in your shoes and I understand, I'm empathetic. I think it can come across, especially as soon as you sort of hear tech industry, software, change. There's a little bit of a wall up in education, but as soon as they sort of hear I'm one of them, it's one of the favourite parts of my roles.
Excellent. Madison, you're nodding along. What is your favourite part of teaching?
I mean, I have to say the children, right? And I'm not just saying that just to tick a box. It truly is my favorite. You know, when you walk in to a room, you kind of feel like a superstar because you get Maddie, Maddie chanted over. And just the connections you make. Like when I was in the classroom, I had every year a set of siblings every year. For the whole 4 years I was in a classroom, and you make connections with families, and you really do get to see them become people. And when they finally grasp a concept, there's no other feeling like it. And I think being able to transfer that skill now into being a teacher mentor, I get to see the same from a step back. So I get to see when the teacher experiences that joy. Don't get me wrong, it was very scary walking into my classroom on the first day, and it was up to me. You're not a student teacher anymore. You can't look over to your supervisor, but you learn very, very quickly. And I honestly wouldn't do anything else except work with children.
You've done a great job of preempting my next question. And Daniel, I will ask you, what is your favourite part of teaching? You're not off the hook, so I hope you're coming up with something amazing. But Madison, what is that experience like of being a teaching student and then moving into a teacher role? How do you prepare for it? How, what's it like?
Yeah, so I mean, at uni, right, you learn all the theory behind things, you learn subject content, but you never learn how to teach until you're on the floor watching someone else do it. You've got to find your own spark. So every moment on prac was just mind-blowing because you're watching someone do what you've always wanted to do. And then your first day in your own classroom, you're like, oh, now it's just up to me. But it's surprising how quickly you find your feet and remember how to do what you want to do. You've got all that knowledge behind you. You've seen someone else do it. Of course, all the wheels fall off a few times because, the children don't read the textbooks that we do. But you figure it out and you get to have those amazing successes. And I think the more pracs that I went on, the more confident I became. And, when I left ACU, I felt like I could do it. There was no doubt.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. Daniel, what is your favourite part of teaching?
I am going to sound like a broken record, but I am going to say the children as well. So it is definitely my favourite part of the day. Like sometimes when you're going through the marking, the admin, you're like, is this worth it? But then you return to the classroom and they make you laugh, they inspire you, they teach you things as well, which is something I find happens a lot. And yeah, you get to celebrate their successes as well. So I like being a year 12 teacher as well. It's always really heartwarming getting those messages the days that the ATAR is out and they've got into the dream course they've always aspired towards, and you've been able to help them in your individual subject. Those sort of things do keep you going, and you really got to hang on to them as well.
Look, I think absolutely everybody, I'm sure we've all had some not so great teachers, but I think absolutely everybody looks back at some point of their education and can point to a teacher who has really had an impact on who they became, what they ended up doing, or some amazing experience they had. So I can certainly understand why that is the thing that kind of drives all of you. A few different questions here. A lot of prospective students might be tossing up, do I want to be an early childhood teacher? Do I want to be a primary teacher? Do I want to go into secondary? Did any of you have that kind of experience? Feel free to nod at me. And how did you make the choice? I'll start with you, Tracy, maybe.
Easy. I sort of knew going in that, and I do apologise, Daniel, I didn't want to teach high school. From all of my time that I was exposed to children, prior to going to uni, it was always, I did enjoy that younger age group and that discovery. And it is a little bit easier, as Madison spoke to before, seeing that penny drop with them and seeing that learning. And I think the benefit that I had at ACU was I could do birth to age 12. It was one of the few unis at the time that really allowed me to do early childhood and primary without the need for me to choose one. It's also like when we talk about 4 years at uni, it's also value for money. It was such a great opportunity when I started going for roles in primary schools to be able to say, I've actually studied what they've done before. understand what they're coming through from long day care and kinder, and what that care environment's like, and how to really ease that transition into prep and early primary school. So there was definitely two ways of thinking there, but that was the choice for me. It was just, for what I'm putting in, which is 4 years of quite difficult work, I'm getting the most amount of benefit here at ACU.
Thanks, Tracy. And Madison, you were kind of enthusiastic about that. Did you have to weigh it up, or was it always an obvious choice for you?
Do you know what? I couldn't decide. So that's why I did the dual degree. And then being on prac, being in the classroom, made me realize that the little ones was where I wanted to be. You know, I was a kindy teacher, but I also taught in a nursery. I was the centre educational leader. I was the centre cook. I liked being in an environment where I could change things up constantly, but I couldn't decide. I'm surrounded by teachers in my family. They're high school teachers, primary school teachers. So talking to people I knew, but it was genuinely prac and just being out there and doing it and going, you know what, I much prefer the young ones. And that was just what happened. And, you know, every time you came back from prac, different people had left the course or come into the course because they'd come to the same realization. And that's just the way it is. Sometimes you just need to get out there and do it before you decide.
I think it's really important to point out that at ACU, we do have a common first year as well. So if this is something that you are weighing up, you do kind of get a bit of an opportunity to be in an environment where you are focusing on teaching and focusing on education, doing your subjects. You do a community engagement unit in your first year, so you do get out. So you kind of do get that, you know, it's not, you have to make this decision right now. You kind of do get that flexibility. Daniel, I'm guessing, because, you know, I can sense that you've got a real passion for the content matter as well as the young people. I'm guessing maybe high school was kind of a natural choice for you.
Yeah, I never really considered teaching the real little ones. I don't know if I had the patience for that. So I'm very, I have a lot of admiration for those who can do it. But yeah, as you're sort of saying, yeah, kind of really wanted to teach my sort of specialized content, history sort of especially. You can only really get to go into that depth sort of in the senior ends of school. So yeah, that's kind of what I was always leaning towards.
Excellent. And some, you know, both the French and the Russian Revolution, very interesting subject matter there. So yeah, I completely understand where you're coming from. So we've got, I think, just over about 8 minutes to go. And, you know, I think a lot of people tuning in love getting access to alumni, because you've not only made the decision about which course to choose, you've successfully completed a course, and then you've taken a course out into the workplace. So this is a bit of a double barrel kind of hardcore, but I'm sure you've thought that this might come up. A, what is the hardest part of teaching? And then B, what tips would you give a first year teacher, Madison?
Oh no. Okay. So the hardest part is cracking the code on some of these young people. You know, sometimes you just cannot understand why they are doing what they are doing. And it's harder the newer that you are. I'm pretty lucky with Good Start. We have a whole wealth of resources to support us doing that. And then people like myself go out and support you also, but that's the most difficult thing. And working with families, as much as we love them, it's a whole different group of people that you probably don't think about while you're studying, that you have to kind of collaborate and negotiate with. So I guess my biggest tip for new teachers, no matter what kind of environment you're in, is relationships first. You can't do anything unless your people trust you. And by that, I mean children, families, and colleagues. I just put so much time into relationships, and I feel like that's given me the most success, because you can only go up from a solid foundation. You can't build the roof before you build a floor, is what my manager always says. So you've really got to have that solid foundation of rapport and trust and a deep knowledge of your young people, especially these kindy age children. You really need to know what is making them tick, what their family looks like, where they are developmentally. And then once you have that, you can kind of shoot for the stars.
I think that's very important. You are, you're helping them set their foundation for how they're going to learn. And it is, I've got a number of friends with children at that age starting school, and it's interesting how each one has approached it differently, but it is such an important time in their lives, and, it really does kind of help set how they're going to engage with education. So I'm glad you've pointed that out. Daniel, what's your hardest part of teaching, and any tips for new teachers?
I think the hardest part is definitely sort of finding that work life balance. And I'm in my 7th year of teaching now, and I'm still sort of trying to get on top of that, particularly sort of like the marking side of things. As an English history teacher, there will be some sort of long nights marking, getting work done before the next school day. But the biggest piece of advice is sort of just to reach out to your other colleagues. They've got a wealth of knowledge and experiences that can make your life easier. And maybe as a first year teacher as well, don't feel like you need to sort of say yes to everything as well. I know you want to put your best foot forward and to sort of to impress everyone, but first year is a little bit of self-preservation. You need to almost be a little bit self-indulgent and to look after yourself, and to rely on the resources that other people give to you. Rely on asking others for help. Don't feel like you have to go through the first year alone. So.
Yeah, and I think, we've got two very strong examples of this on the call, with Madison and Tracy, both in roles that are about mentoring teachers. It's, these positions would not exist if it wasn't a known need that, new teachers heading out into the field need that level of support. So like when you come to uni, I'll say this very clearly. I know particularly when you're in high school, some teachers love to put the fear into you that when you get to uni, nobody has your back and you are completely alone and you have to be on top of things. And that, it's particularly not the case at ACU, because we are a university that tends to have small class sizes. And on many of our campuses, I'm on Canberra, it's a beautiful small community. You will get to know the staff very well. You are definitely not on your own, and there are a range of support services. So when you're at uni, make sure you put your hand up, make sure you look for all the help that you can. And as Daniel's pointed out, take that same attitude out into your early career. Tracy, what is the hardest part for you, and what tips do you have?
I was going to say that they both alluded to it, but teaching is probably one of the most altruistic career paths that you can go into. There's never really a time where it's all done and finished and wrapped up. It's a constant strive for progress for these children and for these families and their connections to each other. But that being said, it's really hard to pour from an empty cup. So as a first year, really making sure that you're looking after yourself. It's simple things like making sure for full days at school you have a really well supportive pair of shoes, that you're eating properly, that you're prioritizing nutrition and sleep. Because if you love teaching, which is probably why you're here and on this call and trying to study it, there's a good chance you'll try to give it 100%, but you also need to look after yourself first. A lot of people talk about teachers getting sick in their first year. That cold never really goes away every winter. So just making sure, again, that little bit of self-indulgence, self-care. Students are nothing without you. So making sure that you look after yourself as well.
All very, very good tips. And before I wrap up the webinar, there is a lovely question here, and I'd love to hear briefly from each of you. Who inspired you to go into teaching? Madison?
So like I said, a lot of my cousins are teachers, but my grade 4 teacher, Mrs. Franklin, inspired me the most. And I went back and did prac at my primary school, and it was a very tearful reunion the day we ran into each other, but it's kind of proof in the pudding that teachers make a lasting impact.
Shout out to Mrs. Franklin. Daniel?
Yeah.
Probably no surprise, but my history revolutions teacher, Mr. Nile. So I even had a nice moment. I think it was last year that I bumped into him at a history conference, and I was really chuffed to be able to tell him that I've sort of followed in his footsteps in a way. So so I don't think many surprises there.
Shout out to Mr. Nile too. Tracy, who are we giving a shout out to?
Shouldn't be any surprise. It is my year 10 English teacher, who I then very carefully worded my timetable around to have in year 11 and year 12 as well as my English teacher, Miss Hanlon. She was one of the first teachers that really made me feel like I was an individual, I was an adult, I had thoughts to get out, and someone was there to listen to me. So I do think of her from time to time.
Great work, Mrs. Hanlon. All right. I'm going to kind of just move on. If you do have any further questions, we are out of time with the webinar today. So if you do have any further questions, you can always get in contact with our Ask ACU team.